Hey guys, I'm Joshua Vidovic from Vidovic Arts, and today we're going to be making some Wraiths. A huge thanks to my supporters over on Patreon. If you want to support me further on these videos, you can head over there and pledge a couple dollars per video or per month. It's really completely up to you. You guys are awesome. You are helping me pay my bills, and you seriously, I can't explain how awesome you guys are and how much it means to have so many people supporting me over in there. It really is awesome, and of course I want to give you guys more exclusive models, so if you have any ideas of what you want, head over there and pledge a couple dollars per video, and I will take on any support, any kind of ideas. I would love to get an idea of what you guys want as exclusive models. Anyway, now I made this purely over on ZBrush, so I sculpted it entirely. I didn't do anything in Maya. It was pretty much entirely made from a sphere. So let's have a look at how that was done. Now, like I said, I started with a sphere and I went from there. So you can pretty much do anything you want on ZBrush if you really just, if you know how to move around and, you know, flex your creativity on ZBrush itself. Because you've got tools there that can stretch and deform and fix the mesh itself to, you know, you're not limited by anything really. As long as you can sculpt it and think it up, then you can probably do it. Starting with a sphere, of all things. So the design here was to kind of just go with a draped looking wraith. So a wraith that more or less has no physical body. It's just it's a ghostly being. It's got no face or anything. I went through it and I decided I wanted to have hands at the very least. Otherwise it would just look like a potential robe in the wind, which is definitely not what I wanted to go for. The end product definitely looks like a wraith. I'm happy with the way it looks, but I think I could have made some improvements, specifically with the wraith with his two arms up in the air. It kind of looks like he's just confused as to what's going on, and I had to go back constantly and change the way he was posed just to get it a little bit better, but I think I did my best with what I could. I'm really happy with the way the robes move. There's a lot of movement in this sculpt. You can see that it looks like there's a bit of wind on the models themselves, and I've had a couple people have issues with my robes and models that have any kind of material. They've been saying that it needs a little more detail, so I referenced a lot of Warhammer models and went from there. So these models have way more movement in the robes, and they look a lot more like official Warhammer models that you might find. They're not as thin as those models, and I'm not sure how well this would print up on a FDM printer with PLA, but they worked really well on my resin printer. Now, this is actually my first project on this channel that I'm showing off that I've used a resin printer on. I have previously used it on some skeletons, but I never made a video for that. I pretty much just tested it on the skeletons to see how skinny I could make the models, and it worked. So I can make really, really skinny things, and I thought, you know what, it's time to make some wraiths. And this is what I did. Now, the modeling phase is probably my favorite bit, honestly, out of everything. I like going into ZBrush, starting off with a sphere and just going ham on it and letting my creative juices flow and just, you know, doing whatever I want. And I don't really have a plan, to be honest. I have possibly like a couple reference images, but I don't really have an overall plan as to what I want in the end. And I've done this recently, and I've just had so much fun doing it, and I think I want to make a lot more models like this. Just completely random, you know, how I feel at the moment kind of models. A lot of them are going to be like, you know, morbid atrocities that could probably be used for Nurgle beasts, or just, you know, any kind of demon kind of creation. But, you know, you might get the random wraith-looking thing, which is just completely sculpted from a sphere. I can't honestly stress enough how awesome it is to sculpt from a sphere. It's literally like working with clay, and it's awesome. If you guys can get your hands on any kind of sculpting program, give it a go. It's just an awesome creative outlet, and I highly suggest you give it a go. So that's my plug for sculpting programs. Now, when it came time to painting these, one thing that is really important with these resin prints is to cure them. They are UV curing, which means that the sun is basically what hardens it. And when it's printing, it uses UV lights layer by layer to harden each layer of liquid resin. But if you were to take the liquid resin, say from the bottle, and just throw it out on the concrete, it would turn into a rock solid piece of resin. That it would be garbage, but it would turn rock solid from the sun. So you have to take the prints from the printer, clean them up, and then, you know, put them out in the sun. Or you can get these little boxes that have UV lights that are used for like nails, I'm pretty sure, like at nail salons or something. You can use those and you can harden your models without having to worry about the daylight, which I don't have at the moment. I have to take it outside in the sun and let it stay out there. Because we've got such high UV rays in Australia, it doesn't have to be out there for too long. I've noticed it doesn't have to be in direct sunlight, but it definitely helps if the sun's out. If it's cloudy, it'll still be effective, but you need sunlight for this to cure properly. So if you are getting a resin printer or have one already, and for some reason this is the first video you've ever seen, make sure you cure your prints after you've printed them. Now, why am I going on about this UV curing issue? Basically, if you don't cure your prints and you go and paint them right afterwards, you're gonna have a really bad time. I've done this because I've printed it and it's been nighttime, and I'm like, I really just want to paint this model, and I don't have a UV light thing at all. I've got no sun and I've got no UV machine. And I've gone and painted them. And what has happened is the paint literally never dries. So I've painted the whole thing black, and I noticed it was sticky, and I'm like, oh, it's probably just the paint. It's got to dry, and I just put another coat over the top of it of the next color. Like, it was sticky dry. It's really hard to explain, but it wasn't officially dry, and it was just permanently sticky. No matter, even when I finished the entire model, I had to come back and remove all the paints with methylated spirits, and start again. Basically, had to take it out into the sun, let it set, and then repaint it. Now, that's kind of a good little heads up, because even if you do mess up the painting, you can come back and fix it just by removing all the paints. And methylated spirits is a great way to clean off all the excess resin on the prints. So once you've printed it, you put it in a little pool of methylated spirits, and then you take it out into the sun. But it's also great to remove paint. And what I've noticed with the methylated spirits is it doesn't like weaken the resin at all. It just cleans it off. I accidentally left a model in my little methylated spirits box for over a week, and it was fine afterwards. If it was any other plastic thing, it would have melted and turned to absolute mush. But, you know, this stuff is really great, and it works hand in hand with methylated spirits, so get your hands on some, because you're gonna need it. Now, after that screw up, I came back to paint these guys. They were completely dried. They had sat in the sun for a while, and they're rock solid. So all I have to do is really paint them how I want to. Now, I painted these with 3 different methods, the third being my final one, and the first 2 being experimental kind of looks. I was going for a ghostly look, and I looked up all these models, and I couldn't match it. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't match it. And I went for like a kind of like a green glow, and it just didn't look right. It kind of looked like a gooply thing, and it didn't look like a ghost. So I went to Games Workshop, and I had a word to someone that was working there, and they basically said, use this paint right here, and it's called Nailac Oxide. And this paint I have, honestly, I haven't put it down since I got it. So you pretty much, easiest paint job in the entire world right here. This is what you do. You paint your model white. You can have the undercoat of black if you want to begin with, but you're definitely going to need a white undercoat. And that's like half the job so far. Next, you paint the Nailac Oxide on top. And you're done. That's pretty much it. you can leave it there. I went back and I got a white and I dry brushed over the top, just very lightly over the top. But it is literally just those two paints, and because the model is doing most of the work for you, the nylike oxide is going to sink into all the holes and like the little grooves and all the little details, and then the white dry brush will just, you know, it'll highlight edges that you want to bring up. But you don't even need to use it, you could just use the nylike oxide. Now, one of the cool things with this paint is the use on gold. I have become obsessed with this paint because I have been using it non-stop on a bunch of dwarven things that I've been working on. If you've been following me on Instagram, you would have seen I made a dice tower, which I will be releasing on this channel soon. But I used nylike oxide to make it look that much better. Pretty much gold and this, or a bronze or whatever, and this are best friends. They get along so well, and they make your models look 10 times better than you could possibly imagine. I can't get over how insane this paint is. I've needed it for such a long time, and I didn't even realize it. So, we have here the 3 ghosts, or the 3 wraiths, and these are available over on Thingiverse. They're completely free. If you want to paint them to this scheme, use that nylike oxide and the white undercoat, and you will get this exact result. Now, when it comes to printing these, I had a lot of people complaining about, you know, the bases. People said, can you just release the model without the base? And I was always like, why? And I apologize, I completely understand why. You pretty much just don't want to be using extra resin on these bases. So what I'm going to do is release these bases over on Thingiverse, and this is kind of a, you have to have 2 printers here to do this. Print the bases over on your FDM printers with PLA, and then print your models with the resin printer. That's the result. This is what you should do, because bases are stupidly expensive if you get them from like official places, and this is just the cheap alternative, and it looks amazing. It looks like a normal base. That's the end of this video, so as always, stay awesome, and thanks for watching. See you guys. The lawnmower starts right when I start recording.